Hi everybody, my name is Ambika and in today's lecture we will talk about CBSE's most important topic, report writing. Now before discussing our topic in detail, I want to tell a bit about Unacademy. So on this app, you can enroll yourself, right? Along with that, herein you will going to be helped, you will going to be assisted with India's best top educators, right? So be it your any civil services exams, be it your own school exams or IIT JEE exams, right herein you will be assisted by nation's best educators. So you should, I mean, this is simply my piece of advice. Go for it, guys. And you have to enroll yourself with Unacademy. And for that, you can use my code, which is AMBIKA, to get a discount. So do it, right? Now, as I have already told you, we will talk about report writing. So, what is the objective? Like, what all we will going to talk about in this lecture is that there are various components that help us in making a report very informative. So, we will talk about all of those concepts in detail, and we will also learn that how we can compose a newspaper report or a magazine report. All right. Now, the question arises, why do we need to write a report? And how do we get the updates, the information about the current events? They are basically when we read about the report of all those happenings, of all those events, isn't it? If any fashion trend is like, if there is any fashion trend, if something is trendy these days, so we do know about it by reading articles, right? We simply check out the report and then we come to know, okay, like this is happening these days, right? Any sort of activity, event which takes place, we come to know about it through reports, right? So this is informed to us through reporters who inform us about all these happenings, about all these events, maybe on radio, maybe on television or on in the newspaper itself. This is being done by the reporters. They write either for the magazines, for the television, radio, or for the newspaper. So the medium can be any, but you need to have a report, and the report will be written by the reporter. Now, the news item can be a local news, like something which has happened in your own locality, maybe in your own periphery, right? It is about maybe a state, right? Next comes national news, which is at a larger level, and international is at a global level. The news can be of these many categories, right? It can be a local news, it can be a state news, it can be a national news, or maybe it can be an international news. Now, journalists are storytellers. Yes, they are simply called as storytellers. They write and report news stories about everything from social issues and politics to sports and entertainment. Although there are different types of journalists who write about it, like somebody who is pro with all these with social issues, they will going to write about it. Somebody who is very active with politics, they can write about it. So journalists are simply storytellers who tell us in detail, in depth, what is happening around the world. A journalist represents or presents information so folk can form opinions and make prudent decisions. And simply by listening to them, simply by reading about any of the news, we actually frame our own opinions and views about it, right? So that is what the power of news is. Journalists educate and inform the public about events and issues and how they affect their lives. So they do talk about all the events, how all those events do affect our lives. Now, the news can be of various categories. It can be about political rallies, right? Let's just say the election commission has ordained that there'll be election in like a couple of months. The political rallies start taking place, right? So there can be a news, there can be a report about political rallies. There can be news about weather forecasts. This is something which you already know, right? Before planning our own events, before planning any of our activities, we do check out the weather forecast. So there can be reports about the weather, right? Next come education. For example, if any sort of new education policy is made or any change has been provided, has been introduced by the educators, maybe by the government, or maybe any of new trend has begun in education. So the person who is writing about it will consider that. Next is technology. If any new sort of technology has been invented, or there's a sudden change in technology, whatever it is there, it will be covered under this sort of category when it comes to writing a report. Now, the report can be on fashion also. Again, what is trendy, like what all is in fashion these days. So that will be covered under this category, fashion. Next is about, for example, there is a visit of any of the celebrity in, let's just say, any of the malls or stores, right? So the information that okay, the celebrity was there at that particular mall, at that particular store, at maybe book signing, right? So we do know about it via reading about the article which is being based on the situation. Next comes health. COVID-19, right? So this is something which is right there. And how do we know about it? By simply reading out in the newspaper, by simply watching up the news on the channel, or maybe from radio, right? So these are being presented in the in the form of a report. Crime, anything has happened, like a situation is, it's whatever crime has taken place, right? So we do come to know about it via reading reports. Accidents, right? Next is about foreign affairs. Whatever is happening around the world, we know it while reading the report. Next is lifestyle. Like you should do yoga, you should do this, you should not do this. Good for your health, you should skip doing that. So these are the new ways, like various ways about which we do follow it while simply reading a report or an article on it. Now, this is a simple and a very clear format of a report, right? For example, reaching out. That is simply the headline of our report. Next, just beneath that, we can, it's totally for our own convenience that we can leave a line. If not, then you can simply begin with also without leaving a line, by. So, by simply means who has written this, who has written this report. This is called as by line. For example, by Sapna. Next come, and this time you really have to leave a line, right? So this comes herein after byline. Uh, there'll be name of the place from where the report is being taken, like from where you are writing, from which particular place you are writing, and about where that incident took place, right? Next comes the date. After that, you need to cover all the details of what, where, when, why, and how. Right? For example, the cultural night organized by Convent of Jesus and Mary, Baroda, was an entertaining evening for a noble cause. The brilliant performance of students as they presented songs, dance, fancy dress shows, and one-act plays kept the audience spellbound for 3 hours, right? Next is the next paragraph about some other information. The funds raised were handed over to the district magistrate to be sent as relief for the victims of a recent powerful earthquake that jolted Kashmir, exposing the survivors to freezing temperatures in their makeshift shelters. With temperatures dipping and snowfall reported in the hills in Jammu and Kashmir, the government is working around the clock to help ensure relief supplies. So this all is your further detailed, further information about the same. Next comes the interview. If you have taken anybody's interview or anybody has commented over the event, you need to consider that also while writing the report. Here it is. The contribution is mere, said Mrs. Gupta, the principal of the school, but it is our way of reaching out to the helpless victims to let them know that we feel their pain too. The eminent singer Salim Merchant, who was the chief guest, applauded the efforts of the students. So, whatever the further action, like if there were any chief guests, you have to introduce, you have to make a space for them also. Along with that, if anybody has given any sort of comment, you do have to consider that as well. Next is introductory paragraph. So as I have already told you, introductory paragraph will be all about what, who, where and when. We do need to consider all these WH questions while writing the introductory paragraph of for the report. Next comes the heading. So there has to be a heading, like this is something which has to be there, okay? Choose an attractive and catchy headline because that will give the reader an introduction about the report. So your heading needs to be eye-catchy. Like by simply checking out the heading, they should know what is in there for them to read, right? So the heading needs to be, first of all, this is supposed to be a tiny, a precise, a concise heading, but it is supposed to be again attractive, right? Next comes the body of the report. The body of report usually consists of several paragraphs because we do need to consider all those WH questions along with that how, right? So all those questions need answered. So you can give each paragraph to each WH question, right? There needs to be proper detailed information. You have to give a proper detailed information, and if there were any comments given by any of the witnesses who were present there, you have to give their view also. Why do we need it? Because that will going to give an authentic touch to our own report, like so and so person was there and that person has simply said this, right? So we do need to give, because we need to give a very authentic touch to our own report, right? So we do need to write the comments of the others, all those who have witnessed the event, the concert, anything, right? The accident. Again, if you are writing for the newspaper, do consider the pictures because this actually validates your point. Like, okay, this was there and how it looked like. So you can include pictures or illustrations to give the reader a clear view of the incident, like how it looked like, what exactly happened, like how bad the collision was maybe when it comes to accidents, right? So you do need to consider the pictures. Add a proper caption to the picture. Along with that, you need to add a proper caption, right? You need to add a proper caption with our picture if you are putting up any. All right. Next is the conclusion. So end the report with a short concluding line or paragraph to finish up the story. Right? So you need to end your own story. You need to end your report with a short concluding line or paragraph to finish up the story. You need to end your story, right? For that, there has to be some conclusion attached to it. It should be convincing based on the facts. Again, it's a report. You can't cook your own stories there. This is something which is supposed to be authentic, right? Which actually happened. Whatever happened, you simply need to pick that and you simply need to, put those incidents into words in your report. You can't cook your own story. You can't frame your own sentences. Like you can't frame your own story there, right? So all the information is supposed to be based on the facts. Next is the format. As I have already told you, the first and the foremost thing is the heading, right? How it is supposed to begin with simple, eye-catchy heading, right? The heading needs to be there. Next comes the name of the reporter. As we already know, name of the reporter simply means the byline, right? So we have to write by, hyphen or maybe colons, and then you can simply write the name of the person, the name of the reporter who has written the whole story. Next comes the place and the date, right? First of all, the name of the place needs to be there. First of all, I repeat, the name of the place where the incident took place, it is supposed to be there. It is not like in which city you are sitting. I mean, in whichever part of the country you are in, and you are writing that that state's name or that city's name. No, the incident about which you are writing, that incident, where it occurred, you have to write the name of that particular place. Next comes the date. And post that we're going to write the body of the report, right? The body, the real content, the real story will be followed there in body, in which we are supposed to write when, where, how, who, what, right? So all these questions, all these unanswered questions which were there earlier will be answered now in the body, right? Now, we'll talk about each one of it in detail. So, as I have already told you, the heading is supposed to be, or headline is supposed to be short and catchy. Where is the placement of this headline? It is supposed to be at the top central position of the of our page, right? So, you have an answer sheet. In the center of it, you need to write the heading. Next is the byline. This states who has written the report, or simply we can say that the name of the reporter needs to be there. As I have already told you that in the byline, the name of the reporter will be there, right? Who has written this. That needs to be added up there in the byline. Next is the place. So herein, as I've already told you, place talks about the origin of the news. It's not the place. I mean, if you're sitting in your office and you're writing the name of that particular place, or maybe you are sitting at the for the in the examination hall and then you're writing the name of that particular place. No, we have to write the name of the place where that story took place, where that incident took place. Sorted? Okay. Next is date. So mention the date of the incident immediately after the place of the origin of the news. So we do need to mention the date of the incident, right? When exactly this incident took place. And the format of the date will be DDMMYY. So DD stands for date, MM stands for month, and year, that is the year, right? Next is body. So it consists of the real story explained in detail. Like who were the persons involved, like how many people were there, who all were there, what action were taken, reaction of the people, like as I've already told you, comment maybe and how they reacted, were they happy, were they sad? So you need to cover that as well. If there are any eyewitnesses, you can pitch them, you can pick them, and then you can talk, I mean whatever conversation you had with them, you can write those that conversation in words in your story, in your body, in that is the context. Now the important points which we do need to keep in mind while writing the report: be factual and do not add any information. I repeat, you are supposed to be factual, right? You can't add your own information here, right? It is not a piece of writing wherein you can go all fictitious. No. Whatever actually happened, you need to simply keep that in mind and you have to write simply that part, right? Write an indirect speech and preferably in passive voice. We have to use it, that happened, right? He said that. So we have to constantly keep in mind, we have to use the indirect, right? Next comes write in third person form and avoid using pronouns like I, me, or you. So you simply can't write like I saw that. No, that is incorrect when it comes to writing a report. Have you ever seen, checking out any of the newspaper reports and the reporter has written this way like I have seen that? No, we always write in the third person format. Avoid imposing your personal opinions and do not make any conclusions. I know it is hard to be, to keep away yourself from the situation. I agree. But then simply you can't give your own opinions. You are simply telling whatever has happened in the words, right? You are simply writing about it. So it is not acceptable that you are giving your own opinions or your own views about the event. And you are nobody to give a conclusion like whatever has happened was right or wrong. That is not our agenda. That is simply not our way of presenting a report. And we do need to keep in mind that the word limit is that of 150 to 200 words. Don't exceed the word limit, right? Now, here comes the marking scheme. So, for the heading and as well as for the byline, date and place, it will going to carry 1 mark. All of it will be of 1 mark. Next comes up your content. The content, as you already know, the body, right? The questions will be about what, when, where, who, how the incident took place, like what all has happened there. So you need to write about it in the body, and that will going to carry 4 marks. All the WH questions need to be answered, right? You simply can't skip any of that WH question. You need to answer all those sort of WH questions, all sort of questions in your report. Expression, logical and relevant details without grammatical or spelling errors. You need to keep this in mind. This is a piece of writing skills context, right? So herein there is not there, you are not supposed, you're not allowed, rather I should say this way, you are not allowed to make any of those grammatical errors or any of those spelling errors because they do carry marks, right? They do carry marks, and that is of like 5 marks. So it's not just that. Now, tips to attempt a question on report writing. As I have told you in the beginning of my lecture that I'm going to give you certain tips which you can use while writing your report. So make sure you use language which is suitable for the audience you are addressing. You need to keep in mind for what sort of category, for whom you are writing this report. You need to keep your audience in mind and then choose your language appropriately. The usage of complex vocabulary for addressing children is not advisable. If you're writing anything for DNA, so that is majorly we get it when we were in school, right? So you need to keep the vocabulary in your mind that this is being read by the student. So you have to keep this thing in mind. Make sure you write in paragraphs. Why I'm suggesting this? Because all those WH questions you can answer in individual paragraphs, right? Practice previous year question papers, and they genuinely will going to help you out because then we come to know like what sort of questions can be there, right? And what exactly answers there, like how they want us to be to answer those questions, right? So you do need to keep this in mind as well. Read as many samples as you can. It will give you an idea as to how they are actually written, right? Read the question at least twice. This is mandatory. When it comes to such questions, read it twice. Be sure like what the question is asking for, what all you need to add in your answer, and then begin with your answer. And highlight the important information. It is very important to understand the question and read between the lines. So there are certain times the hints are given in between the lines. So you do need to pick those hints and then write it down. For example, Albert Einstein once said, if you can't explain it simply, you didn't understand it well enough. If you are unable to understand your situation, your own context in a very simple and crisp language, that means you didn't understand the context at all. Next is you have to make your presentation. It is like, it is supposed to be very fine and clear writing on your part. Make sure you double check for grammatical accuracy and spelling. So you do need to check out for grammatical errors and because spellings also, because as we all know that they do carry marks. Leave an adequate number of lines between paragraphs to make it look clean, right? So just to make it very clear, just to make it a fine piece of writing, it is supposed to for like a better visibility, right? For better visibility, we are simply leaving up the lines. Underlining the main points is very important, but it is advised to do it after finishing your exam. Use a pencil and a scale for underlining, right? And as I always suggest in almost all of my writing skills parts, that in your content, try to use small sentences. Don't try to go for those long phrases or for long sentences, right? Because therein we have, like we tend to make major mistakes with that. So avoid doing. Now, Plan before you pen. The most important thing is you need to plan your content for the like beforehand. Before writing anything with pen directly, use the back side of your answer sheet and then jot down the important points, the sequence in which you want to answer all those questions, and then begin with the answer. Herein, I've got this illustration for you all. It is a report about an accident, right? Now, first of all, the heading: two killed as car runs into bus. That is the heading. Now, it is being written by Shweta Vashish, staff correspondent. So, we have written that also, the byline. Next comes the place. The name of the place is Shimla. That is, then comes the date, that is 15 September 2020. Two people were killed and at least three were seriously injured when a Fiat car rammed into a private bus at Sector 7 round about 6 p.m. here today. According to preliminary reports and eyewitnesses' accounts, the driver of the car lost control on his speed and failed to apply the brakes. The bus was waiting for passengers at the Sector 7 bus stand. The injured have been rushed to the government hospital, Shimla, and further investigations are on. Right? Let's reread it. Okay. First of all, what will be there? The heading: killed as car runs into bus by Shweta Vashish, staff correspondent. Then there'll be name of the place where the incident took place, and which is Shimla. Just after that, there'll be date. That is 15 September 2020. Right? Now, what all we have observed here, the headline of this report is short and is not a complete sentence. Right? So the heading was two killed as car ran into bus. Right? The name of the reporter is followed by date, place, and time of the incident. So you do have to mention all these points as well. The entire report is broken down into many paragraphs. And the entire report, there were like layers of paragraphs in this. Because of, I think, the font, it is not visible. In the first paragraph, the entire incident is reported in a gist form, like the whole summary is being given. The subsequent two paragraphs mention the other details related to the incident. The final paragraph contains the inconsequential details, like what all has happened here and the further details. The whole report is factual, it is based on facts. The reporter has not added up any information on his or her own whims and fancies. Whatever was written, it was all authentic and it was all based on the facts. The entire report is in the third person and is in the passive voice. Nowhere we could find words like I and you. Throughout the report, the third person is being used there. Next is a report about an event. Right now, so herein an event took place. Malvinagar Garden celebrated World Environment Day. So that is the heading of your report. Alright. Next comes your byline. It is being written by Ishan Kumar. Jaipur, 6th June 2020. The name of the place where the event took place, along with that the date. Format of our date is DDMMYY, right? Students of Dressing Public School, Malvinagar Garden, participated in a function to celebrate World Environment Day on 5th June at Shanti Bhavan. It was also the 50th anniversary of the state. Chief Minister of Rajasthan, Ashok Gehlot, was the chief guest. The other guests included Beena Kak, S.N. Gupta, Sachin Pilot, etc. The students presented Prakriti Vandana, a song and dance. An effective skit, Kahan Gaye Wo Dharti Ka Swarg, was also presented, wherein experts from State Museum of Natural History, including Dr. Srishan Sharma, and school teachers Jyoti Chauhan and Ravi Singh. The song presentation prepared under the able guidance of Himani Kaur and Rajvi Kumar forced the audience to introspect. The school chairman S.H. Singh and vice chairman M.N. Singh were also present. The vote of thanks was proposed by the Director, National Museum of Natural History, Dr. Sen. So all the information is being covered in our report. What all did we observe? That the report has a headline that attracts a reader's attention, which was Malvinagar Garden celebrated World Environment Day. The report tells what, when, where, how. So all these questions were answered in a very organized format. It wasn't like, first of all, we are beginning with when and then we are simply hopping, we are simply jumping to what, right? So there's supposed to be a proper linear formation in which answer, I mean, what answer you are answering for the very first time, and then what is supposed to be the next one, right? Finally, next is the report has the name of the writer or the reporter. So that is by Ishan Kumar, right? Now, sample 1. Herein we have got a sample. What is the question? MMJ School Kanpur recently organized a science symposium on the topic effect of pollution on quality of life. The topic is effect of pollution on quality of life. For Sakshi or Sohail, editor of the school magazine, write a report on the event for your school magazine. We are supposed to write this report on for our own school magazine. And the word limits are already being mentioned, that is 120 to 150 words. And this question is taken from CBSE 2018, so a recent question. Right. Report on Science Symposium held at NMJ School, Kanpur. Now, that is the heading of our own report. Next comes the byline by Sakshi or Sohail, editor of the school magazine. Now, we have divided our report into various paragraphs. Kanpur, 2nd March 2020, comma or colon, whichever way you are fine with. A symposium was organized on 1st March 2018 in the school on the topic effect of pollution on quality of life. All the science students were a part of the elucidative program. See, now the next question will be answered. The event started with the felicitation of the guest speakers. Thereafter, the participants were espoused by Mr. Rohan Sharma. He acquainted them with the objectives and goals of the workshop. The resource person, Dr. Jaren Elbert, reflected his profound knowledge on the topic and highlighted how important it is to curb the menace of pollution. An exalting demonstration of the effects of pollution on our lives galvanized the engrossed participants. After the lunch break, Dr. Jaren Elbert, resource person, exhibited the possible steps that can be undertaken at the personal level to reduce pollution. It was followed by another session on the basic concepts behind pollution reduction, which triggered the young minds into thinking innovative ways, right? An interactive concourse ignited the inquisitiveness of participants. They have committed themselves completely to bring about a change in the situation. The informative workshop culminated with a vote of thanks proposed by the head of the science department. So you have put down all the information, what all has happened when your school organized, that the name of the school is MMJ School Kanpur, organized this symposium on science, right? Now, sample 2. As you were traveling by train, you happened to witness an accident at an unmanned level crossing. As the reporter of a newspaper, write a report on the accident, including details of the number of people injured and the extent of damage caused. So you need to answer all these questions in your report. We have already got the questions here, right? Including details of the number of people who were injured and the what all damage were being caused because of that accident. So, first of all, we are supposed to begin with the heading. 56 injured in train tractor trolley collision. And now it is being written by Sanjeev Kumar, Times News Network. Now, Uttar Pradesh, that is the name of the state or the place, right? Comma, the date. 28 March 2020. One more accident at an unmanned level crossing. The railways were to be blamed as they did not have people posted at such crossings to prevent such accidents. The correspondent was traveling to Kanpur by the Lucknow Shatabdi when it hit a tractor trolley at an unmanned level crossing after Khurja station. The train driver was handicapped due to the heavy fog for prevailing in the morning hours. The train stopped and relief measures were undertaken by the passengers. Apparently, the trolley was full of a marriage party returning to their village after solemnizing the marriage. 14 passengers of the trolley were seriously injured and were shifted to Khurja Civil Hospital by ambulances. The tractor and trolley were smashed beyond repair. The local administration had announced suitable compensation to the injured. The train resumed its journey after 3 hours, and the whole information is being given by Sanjeev Kumar, Times News Network. We don't need to write it again, but we can simply skip this part rewriting. All right. So I hope you are very much clear with report writing. How are we supposed to write it? What all format are we supposed to follow? Like the heading, then it will be followed by the byline, place, comma, date, and the whole content. All right. So I hope you all are very clear with the topic. And as I have already told you, you all have to enroll yourself with Unacademy. And for that, you can use my code AMBIKA to get a special discount. So go